What makes plastic such a great material is also responsible for making it so hard to deal with once we're done using it. So it's difficult to recycle, it resists microbial degradation, and much of the case, that's why it ends up in landfills or ecosystems around the world. A lot of time and attention has been given to alternatives to plastic, but oftentimes they end up mimicking plastic so well that they kind of just act like plastic. Scientists are now honing in on what makes plastic so difficult to recycle or why it is so resistant to microbial degradation in order to fix what we've already created instead of shunning it altogether. I mean, this makes sense, right? Not all plastics are bad. A lot of them are actually really good. If you think about the medical industry, if you think about plastics that hold an airplane together or plastics that are in your car and your cell phone, there are quite a few of them that are super, super necessary. But despite the fact that there are a lot of plastics that are really useful for us, there is a common consensus that we're using too much stuff and we need to find better ways of either repurposing it or finding ways to do away with it altogether. Scientists are now looking at the chemistry of these plastics and trying to figure out if there's opportunities to sort of remove something that's a little bit more durable, long-lasting, and insert something that's more biodegradable, more biological. These new additions are actually things that you're super familiar with. It's called biomass. So if you look outside your window and you see some sticks on the ground and some leaves, some wood, that's exactly what scientists are now putting into these plastics instead of something that's more fossil fuel based. As an example, isoprene is actually a monomer that's strung together to make something that's a little bit more long lasting, such as your car tires, for example. Researchers just like Paul Dauenhauer are looking at ways to sort of reshape these plastics and include more biological materials that allows them to be more biodegradable or more recyclable at the end of the day. By doing that, they're actually able to mimic these plastics, but have those kind of biological side effects where they are able to either be broken down or recycled more efficiently. Not only does this lessen our reliance on non-renewable resources, but it also integrates a lot more biological material into the plastic waste stream. This is a really exciting new field of research, and I wanted to speak with Dr. Dauenhauer about his research and learn more about how plastics are becoming more recyclable and more biodegradable.
Plastics that we are working on now fall into kind of two categories. There's the conventional plastics, which exist right now that we can make renewably, so they can be renewably sourced. But we can build new functionality into them as well to help make them decompose under the right conditions. That's kind of the first category. But the more exciting category are entirely new plastics and polymers entirely. So completely new molecular structures that not only biodegrade or are recyclable. And when I say recyclable, I mean they can be used over and over and over hundreds of times, and you have no loss in quality. But they can also biodegrade.
There are several properties of plastic that make it hard to manage as a form of waste. So I spoke to Dr. Dauenhauer about what specific properties he aims to change.
They have better properties as well. So a lot of the polymers we use, we love them because they're low cost. But the new polymers we can make not only can have built-in biodegradability, but because we take into account all the new knowledge about how polymers are made and what their relationship is between structure and function, they can have new characteristics that make them better than existing polymers.
So how did we get here? Why is this all so difficult to manage?
The problem is the polymers we have now were developed without any of these considerations in mind. And so if we go back and we redo the design process, but we take into account recyclability without loss of quality, biodegradability, right? Advanced function for new issues that have come up, right? We can optimize for all of these issues simultaneously. That's just something that was never considered at the start.
Dr. Dauenhauer mentioned that it is really critical for us to sort of have an end-of-life strategy in place for any new material that we create.
When we make a new material, we're worried about its toxicity, right? We should also be thinking about its sustainability metrics at the same time.
Personally, I was really interested in learning more about how you can take something like biomass, these sticks, these leaves, this wood, and turn it into something like a car tire.
Carbon is carbon, no matter where you get it from. And so if you make the exact same molecules that we have right now from biomass, by that I mean trees and grasses or corn or soybeans, whatever we use, the carbon is the carbon. And so if I make the exact same chemical, the consumer won't know, right? Gasoline from biomass or gasoline from petroleum will behave the same way. Same thing with plastics and polymers, right? So I treat it as a carbon source. Now, within that, most plants are made up of sugars. whether it be celluloses or starches or hemicelluloses, I can pull those sugars out and then do chemistry on them to make the molecules we want. Isoprene is one example. It's a key ingredient for car tires, so I can make that from sugar.
So what's in the way of this strategy being universally employed into all these polymers that are derived from fossil-based fuels around the world?
Of course, the cost metric is the number one barrier, right? But we already do this with existing biodegradable plastics, and that the example there is polylactic acid. When we do that by processing corn to lactic acid and then making PLA, polylactic acid products. The key question is, can we do that with other products and meet those cost targets? But the key issue is there's no fundamental economic barrier, right? Biomass is incredibly cheap. Of course, petroleum and natural gas is incredibly cheap too. So, the question is, how can we optimize and engineer that system so it's good enough to meet those cost metrics?
Dr. Dauenhauer really sees the future of polymers having this slight integration of biological material into this really advanced form of chemistry. It's this really great combination of something that serves a purpose for us, but also comes from biological materials.
So in some cases, like PET plastics, we will find better plastics that are more biodegradable and recyclable. For polyethylene, polypropylene, what we need is a closed cycle. So when we're done with them, we can collect them and reprocess them. Now, once we have recycling options for those that give you back the exact same product, there's an economic driver for this. So right now, the problem is there's no economic value to these waste materials. But once we have the technologies to reprocess them, it'll be there. The quality of life benefit of plastics, polymers, and energy are so great, we're not going to stop using these things. The question is, how do we get to the point where they're economically feasible and viable sustainably? It's a fascinating time to work in renewable chemicals and materials. And I can tell you at the University of Minnesota, we have a lot of people working on these things as part of a big team. I'm just one small part, but it's a very exciting time.
And there you have it, folks. Maybe the graduate had it right. Maybe they spoke to it correctly when they say plastics were the future. But instead of plastics that came from fossil fuels, we're talking plastics that came from sticks and stones. Plastics serve many important roles in our society. So instead of shunning it altogether, we should be really excited about these opportunities to do more research into incorporating biomass into plastics or making them more recyclable. It's really exciting at the end of the day what the future of plastic looks like. So sticks and stones may break my bones, but they can also be used to make plastic. Sometimes I wonder where these phrases come from. Like, did someone get in like a stick and stone fight and then someone after that called them a loser and they're like, well, yeah, you broke my bones with sticks and stones, but words didn't do anything. And then they just like casually limped off to the hospital. I don't know. I want to thank you guys for watching the video. If you appreciate it, if you have suggestions, definitely leave us a comment, leave us a question. If you would like us to cover certain stories in the future, please email us at science@plasticoceans.org. Thanks for watching.